Ladies and gentlemen, that is the Greenbrier. It is nestled on 11,000 acres in the West Virginia mountains. It is without a doubt the prettiest property we have ever brought connections to. Be there. It's special. It's home to the FedEx Cup. Lee Trevino is the golf pro there. He takes a special effort to be a part of the events with every organization bringing something in there, but it's a very special property, and I encourage you to attend. Okay, special thank you to our sponsors, which would be Freight Quote and C.H. Robinson. Greg West, thank you very much for making that happen. DDC FPO, AFN, Estes, Unison, thank you very much for being our server sponsors, our gold sponsors, DDC FPO. Go back on that for a second, man. I'm sorry. DDC FPO, Echo, and Worldwide Express. Part of me is like it's a long night, got to bed around 3 o'clock. So, I wasn't partying, by the way, I was working. So, okay, we got now. Special thank you to all our sponsors, 15 total for Connections 2016. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our sponsors. Our media sponsors, the American Journal of Transportation, DC Velocity, and Logistics, the Journal of Commerce, Logistics Management, Supply Chain Brain, Supply Chain Quarterly, and Women in Trucking. Thank you for being a part of what we do with Connections and also with Jumpstart and helping bring our message to the market, and for all you do to help us. Mike Levin lead on the stage today, Bill Cassidy sitting in the audience, and Mark Solomon as well, for what you guys do to help us promote this very special event. If you're not using your conference app, today's your last day. But get involved in that. We are going to go cold turkey sooner or later with this conference app, where we move everything paperless to the app. So get used to it, start using it, take advantage of it to network. That's the most special thing about it. It's the networking opportunities you have with that conference app. This afternoon, around 12, we will have our drawing for our $1,000 grand prize winner. We'll simply take and bring the white boxes, or actually drop your badges in a white box around the 10:20 break. We'll also give you another chance to drop your badges. We'll bring them to the stage and we'll pull the lucky winner of a $1,000 Visa gift card. So don't miss out on that. Be here to be a part of that. Now, Amy, how many of you guys know Amy Stankowski at the front desk? If you don't know Amy, get to know Amy. She's like our guest relations specialist, guru. She's like the face of the conference, putting all the registrants. And she spared no expense in bringing this to me today on official SM3 letterhead. I don't know sure where she got it from, but here we go. The winner of the Tuesday evaluation for Amazon Echo is Brad Hollister with Clearview, and then Christina Carroll with C.H. Robinson. You've also won an Amazon Echo, and you can pick those up from Amy at the front desk. And she'll be there through 12 o'clock today, so try to stop by and get it. If not, we'll mail those to you, okay? Our next panel is on last mile delivery. And about 4 months ago, I got with you and I said, Mike, I want something that we can bring to the conference where a guy looks at that or a guy looks at that and says, I can take that back home and learn from it. And that's when we connected with these 3 fabulous speakers today as well, too. But this panel is the brainchild of Mike Levins of Logistics Management. And it's all about last mile delivery and trying to take and connect the carriers with service providers to make those residential deliveries. And with that, Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you. Let's get going with this because it's going to be a great panel.
Yep, thank you very much, Tom. Appreciate it. And thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us this morning. And welcome to Delivering the Final Mile. This is a panel discussion where we're going to help put this now vital element of residential and small package delivery into much clearer perspective. That's our goal today. Now, to do this, our panel is going to help define the current market drivers, explore the existing strategies which are being implemented, and dive into the technologies that are being developed to automate last mile services and improve the all-important customer experience. We know how that's all evolving right now. Now, with the rise of online commerce, fueling business to consumer shipments, last mile deliveries are more important now than ever before. I don't think there's anybody in this room who wouldn't agree with that. In fact, we're seeing new models for handling the last mile, like click and collect locations. We're seeing the rise of Amazon and its own last mile, same-day delivery service tests, but we're also seeing added cost pressures in the form of tougher dimensional pricing from parcel carriers. And these are all evolving challenges that are forcing closer scrutiny of last mile processes on all sides of the logistics and transportation equation. Now, in fact, this has created a landscape in which everyone is looking for a piece of the final mile pie. And as consumers expect more mobility and the lightning fast turnaround that mobility represents, but who's positioned to be in the best position to handle this remains the burning question. And today, we're going to try to cut through a lot of the noise that's being created around last mile conversation. And to help us do that, we're joined by this terrific panel. We're joined by Kirk Godby. Kirk Godby is founding partner of FM2 Logistics Solutions, an immediate past president of the Customized Logistics and Delivery Association. That's called the CLDA. We're going to learn more about those folks in a little bit. Kirk's going to touch on the current e-commerce market, explore the opportunities for carriers and service providers, and share the importance of delivering a final mile, developing a final mile carrier network. We're then going to hand the podium over to Jeff Musick. Jeff is Chief Marketing Officer and Executive Vice President at Pitt, Ohio. And Jeff is going to take a look at how the growth of e-commerce has pushed LTL carriers to rethink their portion of the last mile delivery equation. We're then going to wrap things up with a presentation by Will O'Shea. Will is Chief Sales and Marketing Officer for XPO Logistics, Last Mile Division. Will will put the new consumer vision of the retail experience into perspective and share his position on what he believes are the keys to last mile success. Now, after each panelist shares their perspectives, we're then going to enter into a bit of a Q&A dialogue. I have some questions here for the guys. We'll have a nice conversation rolling after we see their unique perspectives through their slides. And then, of course, we're going to open it up to everybody for Q&A. And please keep thinking of those questions. We'll have the magic boxes running around for you guys as well. So let's get things rolling. Kirk, I believe you're going to kick us off today. So why don't you help us put things in perspective from your unique position?
Good morning. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me. I've spent my career in the final mile space. Mike mentioned the Customized Logistics and Delivery Association, and that's what we do. And I spent 25 years in this space, and obviously with what's going on with e-commerce has pushed and pointed towards our industry. And obviously it's all about e-commerce. E-commerce, larger than parcel items, being in position from point A to point B or pool distribution. A lot of different things from final mile that, from interline to residential, box truck. It's just everything. We're starting to see all these things being pushed at us, and most of it's coming from the LTL world and the 3PL world, and it's all about this larger than parcel that we're seeing. The first thing I would like to say is that our industry from the final mile perspective is very fragmented. There's about 7,000 companies out there. Our association has 400 members, and a lot of them are local, some of them are regional, multi-state, multi-operations in different parts of the country. But it's fragmented, and but they're very skilled. They're very high-tech, paperless type environment, and like I said, our industry is in a pretty darn good position right now with everything that's going on. What's the opportunity here for LTL is to obviously take advantage of this e-commerce boom and finding solutions out there, whether it's internally or it's with some of your current cartage agents, or whether it's a final mile network that you build. There's obviously a huge opportunity that's brewing, and it's an opportunity that you could actually sell into. Where if you don't have, and obviously probably not right now, but if you don't have a final mile service and you're looking to get into that, there's certainly some huge opportunities to sell into that with some nice profit margins. So I'll talk a few minutes about kind of developing a final mile outsourced carrier network. And there's several important pieces here, but I'll start off with risk management. Risk management and carrier vetting is obviously a big key. It's a challenge. I mean, I mentioned there's 7,000 of these companies that are out there, but it starts with proper insurance coverages and all the way down to the driver level. Our industry leverages the independent contractor owner-operator model heavily. And there's several companies that their drivers aren't covered with occupational accident, and it obviously protects the shipper in the event that someone should get hurt on the job. And having tools and having resources to properly vet these companies is absolutely a must. Technology. I mentioned that the space that I come from is very high tech, paperless type environment, and there's obviously ways to communicate with them, whether it's EDI or API or whatever type of technology that you have. Portal solutions. There's a lot of different pieces to that right now, but this particular group that I would present is extremely high tech and can connect really to anything. I'm having a hard time seeing the screen here. I'm sorry. The experience and flexibility and communication, and find some carriers out there that are actually doing this. I mean, there's a lot of skilled carriers. Some have niches. Thank you. Some are stronger in certain areas than others, and customer service is paramount. Carriers that are flexible can customize to your needs. We come from the same-day world of 1 hour, 2 hour, 4 hour delivery. There's really morphed into box trucks and larger vehicles over the past 8 to 10 years. And in the middle of the night, if you have a need or you have some type of customized need in the middle of the night, these are the kind of folks that will do it for you. Consistent next day, same day type service is the culture that we live in. I would say, from a pricing perspective, over the past 2 years, I've gotten to learn a lot about the LTL world, and I obviously figured out pretty quickly you guys have a very sophisticated tariff and pricing system, and the final mile world that I live in is really simplified, and we do a lot of things by delivery, per delivery. It could be a mileage band, it could be a zone, but it's very simplified. It's very simple, limited accessorials, and I would say that if you're going down this path, I would keep it simple, and they're used to that, and they don't know what a D82 split is. I can tell you that, no question. Carrier procurement. Leveraging a national network. I talked about the CLDA, and these are the 400 of probably the most professional members in our space, and they do these deliveries every day. They have the qualifications in technology and operations, and as I mentioned earlier, 400 carrier members. In fact, Amazon 6 years ago started coming to our conferences. We have 2 conferences a year at the CLDA, and they basically built their entire delivery network with our members. And there's a few of them in here today that do work for them. And so I would say you have opportunities to look within your current network. I certainly hope that you would leverage some of the CLDA members as well, and or leverage some other type of national network that's out there, whether it's CLDA related or not. So I'll pass it over to Jeff.
Thank you, Kirk. Good morning. I'm Jeff Music with Mid-Ohio. Thank you to the SMC and to Mike Levins for inviting me to participate on this panel discussion. Unlike Kirk, who spent his professional career in the last mile space, if you'd asked me, I would say no, I haven't. But I think as we started to look at our business at Mid-Ohio, we're surprised to see the growth of residential business. And today I think we have some comments that are relevant to speak about. I come from a background of a carrier that focused on industrial, dock-to-dock business, not even doing very much in the retail space. But as we look at our book of business here in the last year, we're surprised to see that our residential deliveries have increased by 20% year over year. And as I talk to my counterparts in the industry, the numbers and the growth we're seeing is not very different. So what's happening? Why is that relevant? And where are we going? Over the years, if you talk to most LTL carriers, they looked at residential deliveries as really a necessary evil. And why was that the case? Probably the biggest one would be opportunity cost. The perception is that the time to perform a residential delivery and runoff route from a commercial area to a more remote rural area, I might have been able to get 2 or 3 more stops off my truck in that time, delivering in the commercial area as opposed to residential. And there certainly is an element of truth with regard to that concern. Probably a bigger one is the perception is out there that many fleets are not set up to handle residential type deliveries in the LTL space. A lot of companies are set up with pup operations, which drive many efficiencies because of the difficulty of attaching lift gates to many pups and then operating a road operation. Many carriers don't have a lot of lift gate capability. That said, there are a number of carriers, Ohio being one, that does have extensive lift gate capability. It becomes residentials then start to look like more of an option. The other big concern probably out there from a LTL carrier's perspective is the liability concerns that Kirk referenced in his presentation, and the fact that there's an opportunity for driver injury, the perception obviously that there's also more opportunity for property damage as well. But at Pitt, Ohio, and I think as more and more LTL carriers look at this, I think we need to rethink our whole position around retail. Again, we're a carrier that historically has been focused on the industrial customer, and we're extremely surprised as we see a modest single-digit increase in our overall shipment count to see our residential segment growing by this 20% rate. What we believe is happening is that our customer base is starting to leverage their websites and bypass distributors and start to sell to end-use customers. They see the ability to increase their breadth and spread, as that especially is happening, I think, with mid-market type companies out there, which are our bread and butter. The other key thing here is that we need to adapt to provide for more residential delivery services, and I'll talk about how we might be able to do that. We can either resist the market, I think, but we would do so at our own peril. The truth of the matter is e-commerce is driving more residential deliveries into the marketplace, bypassing deliveries that would normally go to a distributor or maybe to a retail store. We have the option of either building out our own residential delivery service, or we can partner, as Kirk suggests, with last mile. And probably the third option would be probably more realistic, a hybrid type solution. At Pitt, Ohio, what we're finding is that residential deliveries add density to our runs, and many times increasing the profitability of those runs. So to look at it and to seek to eliminate them all would really be disadvantageous to our overall profitability. To succeed in this space, I think one of the key things LTL carriers need to do is pick up their game with regard to the communication of shipment status information. If you look at what's possible today in the small package space and the expectations that are being driven to the consignee there, I think LTL carriers need to be able to mirror that. So the ability to provide same-day ETA type information is going to become more and more important. It's no longer going to be sufficient to talk about the need to say the shipment will be out for delivery, we'll deliver it by the end of the day. Consignees want to be able to manage their schedule and know if that shipment's going to be what delivery window is possible, so they can optimize their time as well. And some other things carriers are going to need to do is diversify their fleet, add straight trucks, add lift gate capability when and where possible. Move it forward. So just in closing, I think what's out there for the LTL carrier today is they've got really it's almost like a fork in the road. It's a choice of, am I going to embrace this opportunity and find a way to adapt my fleet to capitalize on this emerging market trend? Or is it one where I'm going to look to outsource totally and move in a different direction? But to ignore it and say I'm not going to participate in it, I really do believe that carriers would do that at their own. So with this, I'd like to pass it over to Will.
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning, everybody. I'm Will O'Shea, Chief Sales and Marketing Officer at XPO Logistics Last Mile Business Unit. And XPO Logistics is a top 10 global logistics provider. We service 50,000 customers across 33 countries with 85,000 employees and over 1,400 locations. So we have leading positions in the 9 essential areas of the supply chain that we compete in. And last mile is the area that I represent. I've been in this industry for about 28 years and have been in the last mile space for the majority of that time. And at XPO Logistics, when we look at the last mile, there's a lot going on, and it's a very complex space. We're the largest provider of last mile logistics in the U.S. We facilitate over 12 million annual deliveries a year. And a lot of those deliveries require special services beyond just delivering product. We're going into some very sacred areas of people's homes, bedrooms, kitchens. We're assembling and installing bunk beds, play sets. So it's a very emotional purchase that we have with a lot of our customers. So we deliver everything from an envelope in New York City that requires delivery within an hour to doing a complex installation of a stove to a new builder in Dallas. So the customer base that we serve is very diverse. It ranges from furniture clients to appliances to fitness equipment, outdoor play sets, to, again, an envelope being delivered in Manhattan. We provide our customers both market-based solutions as well as network-based solutions. And what I mean by that is we have many retailers that will come to us looking for a specific solution in a geographic market. We have over 200 active e-commerce customers that we service within our last mile business unit that are looking for first to last mile solutions. So as Kurt had mentioned earlier, the complexities are very different depending upon the market we're servicing, whether it's a furniture retailer, a cabinet company, doors and windows. You have to use their terminology, their structures that they're looking for from a pricing perspective. They want simplification, which is very important. So again, our last mile business unit, we utilize a contract carrier model. At XPO, in our last mile, we have over 7,000 carriers in our last mile business unit, predominantly operating anything from a small van, but pretty much a 24 to 26-foot straight truck is the bread and butter. And technology is critical for our business. The customers that we service, the retailers, the manufacturers, everything centers around the customer experience and brand protection. So at XPO, we've made a significant investment in technology to measure the customer experience from the beginning, the point of purchase, all the way to post-delivery. And we have touch points, we have technology that allows us to capture pictures at every touch point in the process, survey the customer after that delivery was made, so that within 12 minutes after we make a delivery, the customer's getting a survey, they can provide us feedback, and we can get back to them to resolve the issue within an hour before they're out on social media sharing a bad experience about their delivery. And that's really important today. So last year I was reading something, shoppers made, for the first time ever, about half of retail purchases occurred online. And the internet's changing how customers think of the retail experience. And consumer expectations are higher than ever. When you take a look at the Domino app now, and you can see where your pizza is in the cycle when you purchased it, that it's in the oven. Who would have thought 5 years ago that I really cared that my pizza is actually being cooked? But those type of expectations with technology and small package delivery, they're moving over into larger format items, and consumers are more comfortable buying high-ticket, heavy goods items online. So a lot of the clients that we service, one area of growth that I see is mattresses. Again, 10 years ago, I would have never thought that somebody would purchase a mattress online and then require delivery into the home. We're doing a lot of that business today, and it's because of the expectations that customers have of an easy returns process, and that's moving from small package items to larger format goods like appliances and furniture, where they have very liberal returns processes that allow them to return a product if they don't like it within 30 days. So we're seeing more and more large format items moving from the traditional retail channel through a consumer direct model. and a lot of retailers offer more inventories online and again, direct to consumer. So they want speed and visibility throughout the life cycle of the process. So giving a customer a time frame of this is the day your delivery is going to take place, that's quickly moving away. We're seeing more retailers, more manufacturers saying we want time-specific windows offered at point of sale, and we want extended time frames in terms of the days that we service them. And every stage of the order has to play out exactly as the consumer expects, or they're simply going to take their business elsewhere. So there's a greater focus on technology to manage that customer satisfaction from beginning to end. So with all these changes, as it was mentioned earlier, last mile is booming. It's a critical part of the supply chain, and it's going to become more critical in the next 5 to 10 years in the future. And that's driven largely by the expectations of Amazon and Uber. They're driving those consumer expectations. So some of the things we're doing is, consumers want to see where their product is at every point in time. They want to know that within a certain time frame, they're going to get their delivery. So we're going to see more consumers wanting that real-time update, so more geofencing at the time of delivery, taking the human element out of drivers having to call in and get those updates. Consumers are going to want that real time. They want low cost and simplicity of choices of delivery. So again, just delivering the product is one thing. Consumers now want threshold options, certainly. They want room of choice. They want debris removal. But they also want their online purchase assembled or installed as well as an option. So they want options. And there's going to be more retailers, more manufacturers that are going to push to provide those options for everybody in this room. And compressed delivery windows and expanded days of services that I mentioned. The challenge that we have is, as Kurt mentioned earlier, is the market's still highly fragmented. There's a lot of small mom and pop providers. It's undercapitalized, and a lot of providers haven't made the investment in the technology that the market's demanding. And we see more consolidations taking place in the space as we go forward. And in the last mile, there's silos of expertise. So it's really important when we deal with a client, and we're talking with a client, understanding their product characteristics, understanding the packaging, how that product is it palletized, is it floor loaded. There's a lot of providers out there that have last mile capabilities, but they have excellence in key areas. For example, medical equipment. There are specialized providers out there that do a very good job at handling medical equipment. There's a technical component involved. So there's all the last mile providers are very different in terms of their capabilities. And the keys to success and understanding it is experience is very important. Last mile is like any other aspect of the supply chain. Again, I've been in this business about 28 years. It seems as though everything is the same and nothing is the same. So we still need 2 people to deliver and install an appliance, and that's the same thing as it was 20 years ago. But technology is having a big influence in terms of what those consumers' expectations are. So having sufficient scale and access to capacity is also critical. We had a retailer yesterday that we service that's having challenges handling their July 4th spike. Their volume spiked as much as 30%. So they're looking to us to bring other teams in from other parts of the country to handle that spike. You can't take a regular delivery driver and put them in a consumer's home assembling a product. It takes a different skill set. And the individuals that are making the last mile deliveries are very different in terms of what we look in our LTL business versus the characteristics of the drivers in our last mile business. Because they're brand ambassadors for our clients, and that's very important. So consistency is going to become very important to the retailers that we serve and the manufacturers. They don't want a different experience in Maine versus Florida. As omnichannel continues to evolve, customers are doing business with brands. They're not doing business with channels, so their expectations are that it's one and the same regardless of how they purchased it. The other piece is product packaging and handling. And this is especially important when you start getting into product categories such as furniture, which when you take a look at the furniture industry, there's still a lack of standardization in terms of packaging, labeling requirements for furniture, and it creates some real challenges for us as well. We had one online company that came to us, traditional brick and mortar company come to us that said, we want to start selling online. Everywhere in the country, we want to provide our full assortment. And we put together a first to last mile solution for them. It had an LTL component. We told them, you're going to have to package this product, and you're going to have to make it bulletproof. By the time they went through that whole exercise and they realized what their margins were on the business, they were making about 1%. They pulled back their strategy and they limited their SKU offerings to product that had the right packaging to make it to the final consumer. So I think you're going to see more and more folks rationalize their SKUs and take that into consideration. And customer-centric technology and visibility is going to be very important. And strong, transparent relationships. I was telling Jeff, I was in Dallas earlier this week, and we had a 2-day working meeting with a very large global manufacturer of heavy goods and a large national retailer. It was one of the few times in my career where you had the dynamics in a provider and the three provider coming together to really work through the workflow from beginning point of purchase to the manufacturing side to the provider side on coming up with a solution for the consumer, the end consumer. So you're going to see those silos broken down, more collaboration between providers, manufacturers, and retailers to really impact the last mile. 10 years ago, those discussions would have never taken place, getting 3 different providers in the room, 3 different stakeholders. So it's an exciting place to be within last mile. I think we're going to see more changes as we go forward. And again, the customers want a frictionless, seamless experience, and we're going to all be pushed in this room to be able to offer those solutions. Otherwise, there's going to be challenges. So.
All right, terrific. Great job, guys. Terrific job. I'm sure there are probably a number of questions out in the audience, but we're just going to wait just a few minutes before we get to the audience Q&A. I'm going to run down the line here just with a couple quick questions for our panelists. Kirk, I'll be honest with you. I wasn't familiar with the CLDA until we had a conversation. I learned a little bit more about how you guys were functioning. Can you explain a little bit more in more detail the capabilities and services that the CLDA, final mile carriers, can offer?
Sure. Yeah, I mentioned a few parts of it earlier. We live in a world of 1 hour, 2 hour, 4 hour delivery, and we've done it for decades. And from the standpoint of product, and Will mentioned it, some service providers have some skill sets in delivering medical equipment. Our group does a lot of pool distribution for the pharmaceutical industry, the office supply industry, warehousing, logistics, stocking, repacking, you name it. It's a pretty full, widespread group of companies that offer a lot of general services, common services, I should say, but a lot of specific services. So some have more strengths than others in certain areas, but across the board from delivering organ transplants to liftgate, box truck deliveries, which is we've all moved into over the past 8 years or so. So we've taken a lot of that culture of customer service on 1 hour, 2 hour, 4 hour, and most of these companies have brought that up into the final mile world of 26-foot box trucks.
Gotcha. And Jeff, I found it interesting. We're talking a little bit more about the role LTLs are going to be playing, right? You have to get involved. You can't ignore it. How do you think LTL carriers will choose to create these networks? Do you think it's going to be in-source or outsource a residential delivery network? How's that going to work?
So I think each carrier is going to look and start to analyze their own residential business, look at their own profile of their fleet, as I mentioned in my brief comments, that not all LTL carriers' fleets look the same. And again, if you're pup operation centric, you might need to rely more on an outsourced solution. If you operate a lot of straight trucks, you maybe are better set up for success. I think amplifying on a point that Will made, I think it's important to share, to emphasize that not all last mile deliveries are the same. And that probably LTL carriers are going to be best set up to handle threshold deliveries that one man can handle. That's something that they can gravitate through as well. I think they will always need to, at least in the foreseeable future, as I see it, outsource two-man deliveries, the more complicated type things out there. My sense is the preponderance of residential deliveries today are one-man threshold type deliveries, and though that would be the place for LTL carriers to focus their efforts initially,
Sure.
and then look at more for the specialists in the other areas.
Absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. And Will, you mentioned a little bit more about the difference between retailers and manufacturers, how they have different views on last mile customer experience, right? Do you feel there's going to be a need for more standardization and customization in last mile to handle both of those? Maybe one for one particular area, retailers, another for manufacturers?
I absolutely think so, and I would see that happening. In furniture, again, I'll come back to that one. That's a perfect example where the current network, a lot of the furniture goes through specialized furniture carriers. With e-commerce and more direct shipments coming directly from the vendor, the furniture companies are going to have to, the manufacturers are going to have to make the investment in labeling, standard barcode labels. So as a last mile provider, everything coming into one of our facilities, we're scanning at the inbound receipt. There's a lot of furniture manufacturers that aren't making that investment in labeling. And also packaging, the impact of packaging, because when you're looking at furniture or large format goods, the cost of the reverse logistics and the returns can reach the hundreds of dollars. So as more of that volume shifts from traditional supply chains where you're moving, truckload shipments into a customer's distribution center and more vendor direct, there's going to be more of a need to push those through LTL networks that are fast. So absolutely, we see more of that standardization.
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense as well. And open up to the floor if anybody has any questions. I see a couple hands. There's a number of questions. Terrific. Gentleman in the back. Here comes the box.
Question for you, Jeff. An LTL. You're dealing with a consumer who's accustomed to coming home and finding 3 or 4 packages on their doorstep, no muss, no fuss, okay? They didn't sign for it. LTL has been known for a lot of accessorial charges, liftgate. You said threshold. That connotates inside delivery. Do you see a morphing where there's more bundled services for that consumer? Do you see where maybe you don't have to get a signature? Right. If UPS is delivering something like wine that requires a signature, they'll do 3 deliveries with no extra charge before you got to go pick it up. LTL has redelivery charge. So can you kind of talk about, obviously the consumer doesn't understand the LTL industry and all those surcharges. Do you see that morphing into a more simplistic bundle type service?
Yeah, Jim, great question. I think the key is going to become between the conversation between the LTL carrier and the shipper. I think if you look at the history of accessorials and the litany of them that you just described there, a lot of that was really an attempt by the carrier in some ways to really discourage that business, kind of keep it at arm's length. And if you are going to use them, there's going to be all these steep premiums there. As a carrier goes out there and looks to embrace part segments of the last mile space, they're going to look to rationalize their pricing, as Kirk suggested, simplify their pricing, understand the cost to make that delivery, find ways, as you suggest, to take cost out by potentially with certain products removing the need for the signature and adapting their operation accordingly. So change is coming. But the first thing I think I'd suggest is the LTL carriers need to really look inside their operation and see just what's happening in the residential space. And as that business grows, they're going to need to make some adjustments when and where they can to adapt.
We had some more questions, I believe?
Yes, addressing one of the things that we've talked about this past few days is the driver shortage. And could all of y'all address the more labor-intensive last mile delivery that's required? Obviously, you need a younger workforce than the average driver right now. Age is in its mid-50s, And also, are there different qualifications for a last mile driver, such as do they still require a CDL? And also, do say 24, 26 foot box trucks going in a smaller radius, are they required to do any type of logging? So I guess what my question is there a different qualification? Are you seeking a different type of driver than, say, a normal LTL driver?
Yeah, I will say absolutely. Again, from our perspective, they're going into some very sacred areas of people's homes. They're crossing the threshold. So we use a contract carrier model at XPO, and we put our contract carriers through a very thorough 50-state background check, criminal background check. We're really looking for characteristics when our folks are recruiters and our folks are working with them on individuals with very good soft skills. Driving is important. We go through the MBR, the background, but it's really looking through the soft skills of those individuals and making sure that they have a sense of empathy when they're working, because when you're dealing with the consumer and that consumer interaction, it's very different than when you're bumping a dock and making a delivery. So the majority of our carrier teams are non-CDL. They're operating 24 to 26 foot straight trucks. And what's important to attract and retain those individuals is to have enough volume and work for them. Like work is a critical component. So we see higher turnover rates in markets perhaps where we don't have enough volume to support that type of individual. But it's absolutely a completely different profile from what we look at within our LTL business versus last mile.
Maybe to jump on Will's point, though, I think you also need to look at where is that residential delivery occurring. So if you're working in a dense urban market, you're going to have a different economy, a cost associated with it versus a suburban or ex-urban. One of the things that we were surprised at looking at Pitt, Ohio, as we studied our residential deliveries, we found that more than 50% of our residential deliveries were occurring more than 50 miles from our terminal. So when you start to outsource and look at what it's going to cost to perform a delivery 50 miles from your terminal, all of a sudden using an existing pedal driver who's going quite that distance on a rural route, making commercial deliveries there, now you're starting to look at what's the incremental cost to add a residential delivery, and candidly, oftentimes it will be cheaper to put that, or less expensive to put that last mile delivery on that type of a truck, rather than pay someone to run from your terminal to this remote market and then run back empty.
Yeah, and I would just preface my comment as well. It depends on the service that you're providing. So if you're not going into the home, it's a very different requirement. So if it's a basic threshold or curbside delivery, the equipment becomes more important than the individual. But if there's a lot of interaction that's going to end up taking place with the consumer inside their home, you're looking for a different individual.
So share the same sentiments as Will, definitely.
Outstanding, outstanding. Some more questions from the audience. The gentleman in front of you, second row. Oh, yeah.
Will, I guess could be directed at you. Do you see, and maybe you're doing it now, where XPO segments delivery drivers by specific commodities?
Yeah,
Where I have some furniture guy, or I have an appliance, a stove guy, or is that specific?
Yeah, the technology we have will allow us to dispatch based on product characteristics that we're delivering, whether it's an appliance delivery or a complex install or a basic install, even on when you look at appliances. So our system from a technology standpoint allows us to do that.
Bill Cassidy from the Journal of Commerce. A number of retailers who have been moving toward home delivery from store in recent months have said that they've had to struggle at times to find capacity, largely because the e-commerce demand is growing so quickly that it surprised them. What kind of capacity do we have out there in the last mile delivery market? Is the rapid growth of e-commerce really putting more pressure on you?
You know, it can be a problem in certain markets. You know, I mentioned earlier there's 7,000 final mile carriers out there, but you know, sometimes finding qualified people that really fit your particular business, it becomes very challenging. the LTL world has a hard time with finding drivers. It's for our industry, it's much the same, and it's worse in other areas. But there's certainly ways and tools to recruit, and obviously some of our companies that we in our space are using that and trying to find other means to find good people.
Yeah, Bill, I would just also add, it really depends on what those services are, what services are required at the time of delivery. So again, delivering from store to home of furniture where assembly is going to be required, again, takes a very different skill set. And your pool for qualified candidates is a lot smaller than if it's just dropping off at the doorstep of a consumer's home.
As you're requiring different skill sets, and in many cases more experienced types of work, is this an area where it's more attractive to drivers because of higher compensation?
There definitely is that opportunity. They're obviously home every evening. The drivers that are doing this work like the interaction with the consumer, but yeah, absolutely.
If I could quickly follow up with a question for Jeff. In terms of how you set up and work the operation within Pitt, Ohio, do you find it more advantageous to have this run out of your typical LTL operation in terms of the scheduling, the technology, and dispatch, or is it better to have a completely separate operation because the requirements are so different?
At this point, it's integrated with our regular LTL operation, and we could see, we haven't reached that point yet, where we might hit a critical juncture where we tend to look at it differently and manage it as a separate entity or segment within our business. But today, what we look at inside our network is we have the capacity to grow this business, and candidly, we're challenging ourselves to find ways to become more efficient in it and to embrace this space and capitalize on that opportunity.
Any more questions from the floor right now? We do have another one.
Can you speak to the issue of claims liability with drop-off or no signature deliveries? And are regulations or laws adapting to this situation?
I think as I would understand it, it's all going to evolve between the carrier and shipper contract or agreement. How much risk and how much liability do you want to push onto the carrier? Obviously, there's a price associated with that delivery. As you're looking to reduce the residential fee, or the shipper is going to have to absorb some of that risk back as well. And that's a conversation the two parties have to have and reach a common space. In terms of the laws or regulations, I'm not quite sure what you're referring to there.
I will add, I think technology is going to continue to evolve in answering these questions. So geofencing and scanning at the time of delivery, followed up by a picture of that delivery. So in the case of a cabinet manufacturer, for example, we do business with, we deliver a lot to new construction, new homes, where there's not a superintendent in there to sign. So we deliver all of the cabinets into the adjacent room to the kitchen. We'll shrink wrap that product once it's there, put all the parts in the middle, take a picture of that item, and it geofences that picture was taken at that point in time. So when we have a claims issue, the customer can then go online and we use that to help validate that we did in fact make that delivery. So I think you'll see technology, it certainly won't be the silver bullet, but it will help answer some of that uncertainty.
And maybe to just piggyback on Will's point there, at least at Pitt, Ohio, today we deploy onboard computers on our trucks. We have the geofencing capability. We have the messaging. We haven't worked on the imaging piece yet, but that's a pretty low-tech type solution to handle that. But I think the perception out there, first off, is that the LTL carriers don't want to handle it, and maybe they're not well positioned to handle it. Even from a driver standpoint, a big part of our hiring, training, recruitment is all around the customer service dimension with our drivers, and that's even in the B2B space. Stretching that to curbside or threshold delivery, I think, is not a big leap. I respect what Will's saying with regard to, as we move into the bedrooms and the kitchens, that would be something else. But we would look to outsource that part.
We figured there'd be some great questions from the floor. Another one back there, gentlemen.
Yeah, a question for both Jeff and Will. Interested in how much demand you're seeing for residential deliveries in the evenings, on weekends. In the LTL scenario, you're operating cross docks, which isn't very conducive for holding on to goods, making the appointment. Are you see maybe a trend to going to more warehousing in LTL? And just kind of that environment, what you're seeing in demand and providing that kind of service, Will, weekends and evenings when people are home?
I think the answer is both. I mean, if you take a look at our LTL business at XPO, much like Jeff, our volumes for residential delivery, for a basic delivery of a threshold or curbside delivery, are up in the mid-teens. So, but that product has to flow. There's not a lot of room, to your point, at the terminals to store product. In our last mile business, we have over 50 last mile facilities, and the configuration of those buildings is very different. They range in size from 15,000 square feet to over 220,000 square feet, because a lot of the customers that we're servicing is project work oriented. That product will dwell a lot longer. So does that answer your question?
What about weekend and evening?
Oh, I'm sorry. So the weekend and evening, for our core last mile business, we flex as much as 30% on Saturdays in terms of our core business. So, and that's just a function of the retailers that we service and manufacturers. They're pushing us to provide them effectively unlimited caps for Saturday delivery, but that's been around for a very long time. What we're seeing is more customers wanting to offer their customers time frames at point of purchase. So when we're getting that order profile from them, it says, okay, not when are you going to be there, but here's the 4-hour time window that you need to be there. So, and we see more Sunday deliveries and customers asking for deliveries after 4 as well, 4 in the afternoon.
All right, great. We have about 5 more minutes left. If there are any more questions, please feel free. And if not, I'm just, there's another question right there in the middle of the floor. Thank you.
Anyone on the panel, are the manufacturers' requirements for last mile different than the retailers, or are they pretty uniform in terms of what they want and demand from you guys?
They're similar, and they're driven really off of the retailer's expectations. So if you take a look at it from our perspective, a lot of the manufacturers that we service, those requirements in the SLAs are usually a function of whether they're servicing a big box channel or a dealer channel. They're driven off those requirements of the retailer. So generally, they're pretty much aligned.
Okay. Many more questions. This is great. Right up front here. We need the box, please.
I got the box.
Oh, we got the box. I'm sorry.
Good morning. This is for Will. I think we're an LTL provider in the West Mountain Valley Express. We do what we would call final mile delivery. We just don't cross the threshold, as you say. And as I sit here and listen to you talk about that, I think, what about a driver identifier for those that do go into the home, where the consumer would know who's entering their home before they ever arrive, such as Uber does?
Yeah, so again, all of our teams, of course, are badged, and we're seeing a push to be able to offer that technology so that when they're getting their delivery, they actually see the individual that's coming, a picture of their coming. So in that advanced notification that we send to the consumer, that email communication, letting them know that, okay, this is the actual delivery driver that's going to be knocking at your door and entering your home. That's absolutely going to be, is a requirement as we go forward.
What about reverse logistics, returns, particularly of large format items or packaging being discarded and then something needed on return or disassembly? Do you have any processes for handling that?
Well, for our LTL business, it's very different than our last mile business, which is predominantly heavy goods. So our facilities for last mile, we operate both off of our customers' facilities and then one of our own last mile facilities. So we have compactors, we have recyclers, machines where we recycle the styrofoam of all the packaging coming back, and that's part of the service. So, and the returns piece as well is typically driven by the consumer and the volume. So if it's a large customer that we have in that market and there's enough volume to go back weekly, we'll consolidate those shipments and send them back weekly.
Excellent. Yeah, Mark?
Yeah, this may have been asked already. I was multitasking, doing a couple of things, but you talk about specialized type of drivers to handle these functions. Is there a shortage of available qualified labor to do that, or are you having trouble finding people who meet these skill sets?
For us, I mean, it's difficult. It absolutely is. And there's certain markets, certain parts of the country that are more difficult than others. And once we have them, we want to make sure that we retain them, we treat them good, and we provide them a regular revenue stream. But it's absolutely, it's not easy, and especially the level of person that we're looking for with the soft skills is critical.
Jeff, can you comment on that too?
We have, because we're doing more of these curbside or threshold type deliveries, we aren't seeing probably the same challenge out there at this point. The preponderance of our deliveries continue to be dock to dock. But we do have, we explain to our drivers as they start that they will be working in a straight truck first, doing a lot of liftgate type deliveries, and then transition over to tractor trailer. So it just becomes part of our expectation. From a recruitment standpoint, while it can be challenging in certain markets, by and large, we're succeeding in being perceived as an employer of choice and being in a place where drivers want to work.
And for us, the other thing we look at is we use a voice of the customer. So after we make a delivery and we survey that customer, we look at making sure that the teams that making those deliveries are hitting those scores in the eyes of the customer. Otherwise, we might part ways with them if they're not hitting those scores, those quality scores as we go on a consumer's home. And it gives our customers that we're servicing, whether they're a retailer or manufacturer, a high degree of confidence that the individuals that are making their deliveries are meeting those customer expectations.
All right, folks, we just have a couple more minutes. More questions from the floor. Terrific.
Yeah, Kirk, could you explain in the fragmented same-day delivery world, there's a lot of different platforms that people use for dispatch. How does FM2 connect with those different platforms?
Good question. It's there's probably 5 major software vendors in our space, and then you have final mile carriers that have their own proprietary systems. And when you start talking about building a network, the challenge is looking at various different systems. Obviously, EDI is an option. They can EDI. A lot of them can do API. I mentioned earlier that they're very high tech. There is an open platform in our industry that allows shippers or LTL carriers or 3PLs to integrate once into that platform, map in once, and then have access to hundreds of final mile carriers across the country. So that's one way to really scale it up. The challenge is if you don't use an open type platform like that, then you're dealing with individual, multiple EDI connections with various different operating systems.
We have about 1 or 2 minutes left. Guys, I just want to go down the aisle here just quickly sort of summarize. Any key takeaways in terms of new challenges we're going to be facing, Uberization of last mile, well, that elephant in the room, right? We haven't really discussed that too much today, but there's an element there that could be a disruptor, could be a challenge to everybody in this room. Can we go down the aisle and just kind of wrap things up as what are the biggest challenges and how we can overcome those challenges?
Well, our industry's obviously had our eye on this. There was a point last year, I think I heard there was 68 app delivery companies just in San Francisco alone, which is unbelievable. And I'm not sure how many of those companies are still in business today because they obviously are running on some formulas that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But there's obviously a lot of that going on, and is it possible to get in our space? I think you can never rule Uber out, right, the big ones. And they can prove that they can do just about anything. So our industry is watching that very closely.
I think it was referenced in one of the slides, Amazon and Uber are really just changing the consumer expectation, and that what we all in this room need to be aware of is that end-line customer is looking for different things today and will be looking for different things in the future, and that if we don't adjust to what those are, we may become obsolete.
Good point. Will, want to take us out?
I think the couple key things is the seamless, frictionless experience. You're going to see more retailers and manufacturers. It's all going to be about the customer at the end of the day. It's all about customer experience.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, terrific job. I want to thank everybody for the great questions as well. It made my job easy.